Cleopatra VII was not Egyptian by blood. She was a descendant of Ptolemy, one of Alexander the Great's generals, and her family had ruled Egypt for nearly 3 centuries while barely learning the language of their subjects. But Cleopatra was different. She spoke Egyptian fluently along with 8 other languages, studied mathematics and philosophy, and possessed a political intelligence that terrified the most powerful men in Rome. She came to power at 18, forced to share the throne with her 10-year-old brother Ptolemy XIII as both co-ruler and wife, following the Ptolemaic tradition. But her brother's advisors drove her from the palace and seized control. Exiled and nearly powerless, Cleopatra refused to accept defeat. When Julius Caesar arrived in Alexandria pursuing a rival, she had herself smuggled into his quarters rolled inside a carpet. She unrolled at his feet, and in that single audacious moment, changed the course of history. Caesar was captivated. He restored Cleopatra to the throne, and together they sailed up the Nile on a golden barge while Egypt celebrated. She bore him a son, Caesarion, and followed him to Rome where she lived in his villa and scandalized Roman society. But on the Ides of March in 44 BC, Caesar was stabbed to death in the Senate by men who feared he would make himself king. Cleopatra fled back to Egypt with her child, a queen without her protector. 3 years later, another Roman strongman entered her life. Mark Antony, who now controlled the eastern Roman territories, summoned Cleopatra to meet him at Tarsus. She arrived on a ship with purple sails and gilded stern, dressed as the goddess Aphrodite, with silver oars keeping time to the music of flutes. Antony, the hardened soldier who had stood over Caesar's murdered body and turned Rome against the assassins, fell completely under her spell. Their alliance was both passionate and strategic. Antony gave Cleopatra vast territories that restored Egypt's ancient borders, and she gave him the wealth and resources he needed to challenge his rival Octavian for sole control of Rome. They lived together in Alexandria in legendary extravagance, hosting feasts where pearls were dissolved in vinegar and golden dishes were given away as party favors. They called themselves the new Isis and the new Dionysus, divine rulers of the East. But Octavian, Caesar's adopted heir, was patient, ruthless, and brilliant at propaganda. He convinced Rome that Antony had abandoned his Roman wife, his Roman duties, and his Roman identity for a foreign queen who meant to rule them all. War became inevitable. In 31 BC, the fleets of Antony and Cleopatra met Octavian's navy at the Battle of Actium off the coast of Greece. The battle turned into a disaster, and Cleopatra's ships broke through the enemy line and fled south. Antony abandoned his own fleet to follow her. Back in Alexandria, their world collapsed. Antony's armies deserted him, and Octavian's forces closed in from every direction. Hearing a false report that Cleopatra was dead, Antony fell on his own sword. Mortally wounded, he was carried to the monument where she had barricaded herself and died in her arms. Days later, rather than be paraded through Rome as a captive in Octavian's triumph, Cleopatra took her own life. Ancient sources say she pressed a poisonous asp to her breast, though the truth of her death remains one of history's great mysteries. She was 39 years old, and with her death, the age of the pharaohs ended forever.